What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Quality Time with Uncle Drew, and I'm here with a very special guest, a former teammate, a good friend of mine. We go back to college when I was a senior. He was a freshman at Oregon. Done some great things since then, seen him grow up as a young college student into the awesome and productive citizen and man that he is today. And I want to introduce you to no other than the great and prominent, the man, the myth, the legend. Eric Dungy. What's happening, ED?
What's up, big bro? What up, Unc? Appreciate you having me on the pod. Excited to chop it up with you. So yeah, let's get into it, man.
Yeah, no problem, man. So going back, like I said, me and Eric go all the way back to the University of Oregon. I was a senior going into senior year. He was coming in as a freshman. Went on an amazing run that year, went to the national championship, did some great things. I left. He held it down there, kept Oregon afloat, kept them winning, kept them going to BCS games year after year after year. And I just always like to check in, man. So I know you're originally from Florida. You go from Florida all the way to the University of Oregon on the opposite coast, three something thousand miles away. As you're going through your high school career and everything and growing up, what was going through high school like at Plant High School, and what were you like as a student athlete?
Okay, go back in the time capsule a little bit. So, so I went to two high schools. Went to graduate from Plant High, like you mentioned. Prior to that, I lived in Indianapolis. So my two high school experiences could not be more different. I went to a 1A private high school in Indiana that was like known for like Ivy League students and like I think lacrosse, and I'm trying to think of some other like I mean we had football and all those sports, but like we weren't like putting out D1 football players or anything like that. Had a couple hoopers, but mainly more of like kind of that like niche kind of sports, if you will. So I was there, kind of big fish, small pond. Indiana isn't necessarily the football powerhouse as it is. Definitely not 1A private school. Indiana ball is definitely like not powerhouse. And then going into my junior year of high school, my dad was getting ready to retire from coaching. We moved back down to Tampa, and I switched or transferred from my small private school in Indiana to 4A defending state champions in Tampa in Florida. So definitely a big difference. And I mean, I knew it was gonna be an adjustment, but man, it was an adjustment, definitely humbling. So like my junior year, I was pretty sorry. Just it was a tough adjustment process. I was used to like kind of just being able to show up and just be that guy and ball out and not have a lot of competition. To like all of a sudden like there was eight receivers better than me on my high school team my junior year. I was the ninth receiver, so it was like all of a sudden I had to like really learn how to get it and kind of like start from the bottom and kind of relearn. I knew how to play, but I just had to like enhance my game basically. So it was a process I needed to go through. And then senior year, I was all right. I was pretty good. Helped the team to our state championship and all that stuff. So, but definitely just kind of a journey from like freshman year to senior year, especially switching schools halfway through. Big culture shock, but what I needed to develop as an athlete, as a person. So yeah.
Man, going from a school where you the man to going to another school where you one of many men, that's definitely a shocker. And it's also just, we talk about moving schools or just shaking things up, and your dad's in the coaching world, where we'll get into a little bit. But just having that change for you and going from one place to another, what did that do for you recruiting wise? Considering you say go from being the man to go from just being on the team and trying to get it and trying to steal somebody's spot. What was it like for you as far as scholarship wise coming out of high school? Did you have a lot of D1 offers? Did you have not a lot? Like, were you trying to just figure out where you fit in? How did that process go for you?
Yeah, I had a couple offers. It was kind of I guess I was a late bloomer, as they would say. My first couple years in Indiana, there wasn't any scouts looking at us, and in hindsight, like rightfully so, like they had no business looking at us. So, but part of the reason why I wanted to make this move to Tampa and go to Plant was because I knew the kind of the recruiting hotbed that Florida was. My junior year, like I was fortunate to play with Aaron Murray, who was one of the top ranked quarterbacks in the country. Ended up playing in Georgia. And so I knew, like, all right, because of him, we were going to have scouts at all of our practices, all of our games. We had some other good players on the team as well. So I was like, all right, I knew, like, if I could just show up, even by accident, they might see me, even if they were looking for somebody else. So that was kind of my mindset, was just like, go on that mission and get noticed. My first scholarship offer came, I think, the summer of my junior year. I ended up, I don't know the total. It wasn't like a ton, maybe 5 or 10 offers when it was all said and done. But growing up, Florida State was like a dream school of mine. I had a cousin who went there and just kind of was, fan of the football team, Dion and, work done, Peter Ward, some of those dudes. So I always had dreams of going there. They were recruiting me, but they didn't quite like show me the love how I needed it for it to feel. And Oregon came on pretty late, and it just felt like a natural fit. Coach Frost, me and him had a hit off very well, and have still to this day a pretty good connection. And I was really interested in what they were doing at the time, as far as nowadays everybody kind of runs the same offense, but 15 years ago, like, the spread offense was a new offense, the up tempo offense was a new offense, and so it was really intriguing for me to kind of be on the cutting edge of football at the time. And so when Chip came to my school to recruit me, and Coach Frost came with them, it didn't take a lot. It was maybe a week. I think they came here. I went on a visit the next week, and I was like, all right, boom, sold. Like, where do I sign? So it was like a 10-day, 2-week process between first time I even talked to the coaches versus me making that commitment.
Shout out to Coach Chip. Shout out to Coach Frost. Coach Frost was our receiver coach at the University of Oregon. He's actually the head coach going to his second stint back
Yep.
at Central Florida. So it's great to see him back in coaching. So you say, 20-day process from Oregon coaches coming to visit you, from you going to visit Oregon, from you saying Oregon is a place I'm going to go and play my college football and get my education. Going back to, you talked about your first scholarship offer. What was that feeling like? Was it like, was it jubilation, or was you like, okay, it's about to, all right, I'm not as bad as I thought I was. I'm actually pretty good.
No, it was a cool moment. I remember what was interesting is it was from USF, and they sent me just like in the mail. Nowadays the recruits do the whole little thing where they go on Instagram, they do the little post, and they're like, hey, gotta say that I'm so blessed and humbled to have my 85th offer from my, whatever, right? But like, they just sent me an offer in the mail, and I didn't even open it for weeks, because you get so much mail during the time. I just kind of lumped it with other mail. I didn't even open it. And then I think one day my mom was like cleaning out some mail, and I remember she opened it and like read it out loud to me, and like we both kind of like embrace each other, kind of jump up and down and do a little celebration in the kitchen, kind of like just knowing that even if that wasn't the school that I was going to maybe sign to out of high school, just knowing that, all right, colleges do think I can play, and whether it's going to be USF or somebody else, that first time that somebody says, nah, like, we want to make that offer for you. Because like, you grow up like dreaming of playing ball, and you like know that you think it's going to come, but you don't know for sure, and you like don't know what it's going to take. And you get that first one, it's like, all right, I'm on the right track here. Like, I got still a lot of work to do, but like, it just validates a lot of the work that you've had up to that point. So it was a really, really dope experience and really cool moment, especially with my mom being right there and us kind of reading the letter together.
We're kind of really dating ourselves, and we're like, yeah, this is back in the day when we used to get a lot of letters. I know you probably get them through email now. There's probably still some letters going out. But I remember just when you first started to get, just even introductory letters from
Oh
college
man,
coaches, that was like the level where I saw teammates, or when I was younger, freshman, sophomore, where you see the older guys, like some guys have bins of mail, a couple guys, coach handed them out to a few people. And the funny thing is, like, at the end of my junior year, I had 26 full ride scholarships, and I had to stop accepting scholarships because I was going to graduate early in December and then possibly go somewhere in January or March, depending on if they had whether they were on a quarter system or a semester system. And so you're just over here bringing back memories for me by like, oh yeah, when I got my first one, it was an offer and I didn't even open it. Like, it was just chilling because I thought it was one of them, hey, just letting them know we're interested in you, and we saw this game and you played, like, all the stuff that those things do. So you say you made the decision to go to Oregon, and Oregon is not close to Florida. It's a very, very far way away. Did you have any worries about going that far?
I didn't, and maybe I was a little naive at the time, but like the math I had was that like even if I were to go somewhere in Florida that I had to drive to, in my mind, the drive time and the flight time would be the same. Like it didn't actually play out like that, but in my mind, I'm like, all right, if I went to Florida State, that's like a 6 hour drive. If I went to Oregon, that's like a 6 hour flight. It's the same thing. So that's kind of what my thought process was like. You got connecting flights. You got to, it doesn't always work like that, but that was my thought process. And having grown up in Indiana, I was born in Kansas. A lot of people don't know that. Lived in Minnesota for a few years. I wasn't as intimidated by the idea of like going somewhere different or seeing like a different part of the world or being away from my parents. I didn't think it was going to be like Oregon when I was like mentally preparing for like where I might go to college and maybe it was somewhere in the southeast, maybe in Texas or whatever, right? But like ended up being Oregon. But things happen for a reason, so I'm grateful for that time to like see a different part of the world and like see new people. Like I think we had one other Florida kid on our team on our recruiting class, maybe only a handful on the whole team when I went there. So to meet mostly California kids, Colorado kids, Oregon kids, Washington kids, Hawaiian, Polynesian kids, it was a cool experience to see people that were different from the kids I grew up with.
Mm. 100% right about that, man. Like I said, that's a long way to go from home to pop up in sleepy Eugene, Oregon, small town Eugene, Oregon. And so now we'll just switch over to football a little bit. So you go there. So we're coming off fresh off of our first Rose Bowl game or first Rose Bowl berth that we've had since 90, I think it's 95, 96. And so the future's looking pretty bright. What do you remember about getting to Oregon in your first couple weeks there, just even your first year there, being in that wide receiver room with guys like Jeffrey Mel, Lavaje, Tuane, Josh Huff? What do you remember about your initial time popping up in Oregon?
Yeah, I really remember like that first year was just like it was a blur, but I remember every single moment of it that first year. And like what I remember specifically was again, like I mentioned, our offense was new at the time. It was almost like we had this like secret offense that nobody even had knew about. They couldn't quite figure out what was going on. We had the billboards, we had the signs, and all this weird stuff going on. And I literally just thought we would never lose because we went and started out with 12-0 the first year, and we were very big on conditioning and like wearing our opponents out, and so I just felt like, oh yeah, we're just never gonna lose. Like we had the secret formula. We got these players, we got these coaches, and it was just like this crazy run of like, all right, every week we go in, we practice really hard. Then we have a recovery, and then we go play the game, and then we always start out losing, but then we win at the end, and then we just do it every week. And I was like, yo, this is how it's always going to be. And so it wasn't quite like that, but we definitely won more than we lost. But it was definitely just like a blur. But it's a crazy experience. Um, and yeah, I just remember just like every week, just like I don't know, it was just so special, so different. Like every game was unique. I remember just like wanting to be like present for it, like just wanting to really like take it all in. Like I had an awareness that this was special. Even like our first game, we played against New Mexico. I'm a red shirt, but I remember just like usually when the first game you like beat the other team like 50-20 or whatever, 48-14, something like that. And I remember like Chip kind of was like basically like he was like good teams do that, but like great teams like don't even leave any doubt. And we won 72-0, and they had a school record for points. I think Kenyon had like 5 touchdowns that game. LaMichael didn't even play that game. So I was kind of just like, oh, okay, like we're real. This is really dope. And I'm just grateful to be a part of it. Like at the time I was redshirted and just trying to, help the scout team and do stuff like that. But it was like I could tell right away that we were serious and I like other teams were good, but like we were at like another level and it was dope to be part of.
Like you said, I forgot about Kenyon scoring 5 touchdowns that game, and then Michael not even playing. But like you said, Coach Kelly said, "Leave no doubt." We come out here, put up 40, 50 points, and they score a couple. But everybody knows that first game of the year is a little bit of a tune-up game. Now they're kind of playing harder games. That first one out the gate, but it's also hard because there's so much rustiness that first game. Like there's all that time you spend in fall camp and the weeks preparing or whatever, but nothing gets you more ready for a game than actually playing a game. And you talked about something. You said, "Hey, I'm on the sideline. I'm redshirting that year. I'm not even playing." Speak about that first year in redshirting and how hard or difficult practice was for you as a redshirt because you're not running any of our plays. You're acting as the scout team for the upcoming team that will be playing. So, what was your mindset redshirting as a freshman and your mindset just going into that first year?
Yeah, redshirting can definitely be tough, especially if you don't have the right mindset going into it. Like, because we were on a great team, I felt like, all right, this is my role. I got to help get, Cliff Harris and Eddie Pleasant and some of our, Thomas Jackson, some of our big time DBs. Like, I got to get them ready to go. So I took a lot of pride in just trying to like give those guys the work, and if I can catch a route on Cliff, then I feel like, all right, if I can route him up and scout team, then he'll be ready to, to cover, Robert Woods or whoever it may be, in the real game. But the challenging part I would say about just that red training process is just more so just like every day, like just waking up and staying motivated and staying hungry because there's no like there's no like pouting the rainbow like, all right, well, Saturday I'm gonna get out here and kill it. It's just like, nah, like you have to be satisfied with like watching your teammates do well and like, yeah, you don't get a lot of gratification, a lot of glory. There's not a lot of like shine in it. You have to just kind of be patient. And then for me, the biggest challenge was not really the season and playing scout team and all that. I kind of was ready for that. It was after the season ended. Again, I'm a Florida boy. The season was like a great run. It was like blur, and then all of a sudden we go back to school in January, and I'm sitting outside. I'm sitting in my class, looking out the window. The class ends at 5:20. It's probably like 4:55. It's pitch black outside, and I'm just like, dang, man. Like, woke up before the sun came up. We had to go run in the cold. Then I got rained on all day. Then I sat in the classroom damp, and now the sun's completely gone. And now I'm gonna go walk home in the dark and then do it again tomorrow. I'm like, this sucks. So that was a really challenging period. That kind of like first winter from like January to like April, where it's just like you really gotta embrace the grind. And even harder than like playing scout team or anything like that is like getting up and going to do the 6 a.m. workouts in February 23rd. When there's no glory, you can't even think about playing a game anytime soon. And well, every day matters. It's like, man, will this one day change anything? Like, you have to find that motivation. Like, well, yes, it will, because you have to keep stacking up these individuals. It's a lot, man. It really, especially as an 18-year-old, like your first time being away from home, and just like just got to do everything on your own. You got to wake yourself up. Got to like feed yourself, cook for yourself, clean your apartment for yourself. All that stuff. It's just like it gets real.
And also speaking of that, so how hard is it? So, Coach Alioti was a defensive coach or a defensive coordinator. And so how hard is it? You talk about, you talk about sharpening your craft. You talk about going against the best DBs. But the route you're running and the way that you run these routes, they want you to run them exactly how the other team runs them. So like
Right.
you can't really be you. How hard was it to like get yelled at for stuff that you don't even know? You
Yeah, like you said, like Oregon is already a little bit different than most teams how we're doing stuff. So then you're trying to like, all right, I'm gonna run this up how we're supposed to do it, but also I got to run it like how the other team's supposed to do it. But like, right now, I don't know how they're supposed to do it. I just saw them. I had a 10-minute scout team meeting before we came out here. I watched two clips, then now I'm supposed to master it. So it's tough. I just remember honestly, like one thing I learned was just how to like take coaching and take like getting yelled at and just literally just like let it go in one ear and out the other. Whereas like the coaches are yelling at you, and like I used to be like, you care, like not that you don't care, but just like, oh my god, I gotta like. But now I'm just like, I got the point where I didn't even hear it. Where it's just like, oh, I got yelled at for like something about something, and I'm not sure. Like it doesn't even phase you. You have to kind of develop that thick skin, and just not even thick skin, just like that like disability, like I said, to not even be phased, or not even hear it really, because it's like they're you realize how stressed out the coaches are and what they have going on, and it's like it's a lot bigger than you.
You're right. You speak on that. You're like, yo, in one ear and out the other doesn't mean I'm not listening to you. It just mean I heard you, and now I'm gonna move on to the
Right
next thing.
now, yeah.
So you talk about that, and we know how it is. Like you said, you're trying, like I said, you're trying to give the defense the best look for what they're gonna face this upcoming week or Saturday, most likely. And and even if you made a strong catch over a DB or something, you'd hear the coach say, "Hey, run it again, run it again." So you got to run this route, and the DB knows what route is coming. So it's like, oh, I can't even make this catch like I did last time because they gonna show out. You're at Oregon, you're there, and when I got to Oregon, the game before I came out there, or the year before I came out there, they played in the Vegas Bowl. I'm watching the game on the TV. They get beat soundly by BYU. It was a lot to a little bit. So my time at Oregon, when we go there, first year we go to Sun Bowl, next year Holiday Bowl, third year Rose Bowl, fourth year National Championship. So a progression of games that got progressively better. You come in, we go to the national championship right away. And if I'm correct, you guys played in a BCS championship game for your whole career at Oregon. What does that do for you as far as what the level of excellence is, and also how you can get spoiled by that?
Yeah. So we did play in the Alamo Bowl my last year. But yeah, we definitely was Rose Bowl. Excuse me, it was national championship, Rose Bowl, Fiesta Bowl. I think was the order of it. So definitely, I don't know. Those are the expectations. I mean, that's kind of like what Coach Huff used to have a saying that was kind of like that's like the new standard. So like whenever you show something, instead of being like, oh, that was cool, it's like, all right, now that you've shown that you can do that, you have to do that every time now. And so that was kind of like the thing. It's like, all right, like now that we've shown that we can go to the natty or like the BCS or whatever, it's like that's what we have to do every time now. So that's kind of like how I view my whole life. Really, it's like once whether it's relationships or business or anything, it's kind of like once you establish that you're capable of something, it's like well, that's just the expectation now. So like that's just kind of how that went. You can say we were spoiled. I remember there was maybe a quote that was maybe like maybe a misquote or misinterpretation. I think either D'Anthony or Josh Hub mentioned that like kind of like oh we already did the Rose Bowl, so like we been there done that. I think it got taken out of context, but it's the idea that like some of those experiences, it's like oh yeah, like the the resort that you stay at the BCS is cool, but like once you stay there before, it's kind of like not as cool the second time you stay there and things like that. But the football itself, the game, the standards, the expectations, like that's I very much resonate with the idea that like once you prove something, then that's just like your new expectation going forward.
So it's funny you talk about that. You talk about it was Josh Huff or D'Anthony or something. I remember reading about it in the paper. But I talked to boosters, and the funny thing about football and life or sports in life is you got to know, like, you got to know the history, but you got to know, like, the journey you guys took to get there. So you got people that are like, BCS is cool, but what I mean, we want something more. But you look at the lineage of Oregon or the history of it, and like we were talking about before, you went through all this time. Like we went through before that first Rose Bowl that we went to, they
Right.
hadn't been, that was like 20 something years, right around 20 years, 15 or 20 years since they've been. And so you start to go to something and you get a little bit spoiled, or you start to be like, well, how college football is nowadays. Like if you're not in the college football playoff, then like what's the point of playing any postseason games or anything? But I was talking to a booster and they were telling me, they were like, they said some students came into the store and they were like, they asked them like, "Hey, are you guys going to the bowl game?" Just like, "Nah, it's just the Rose Bowl." Like, you know what I mean? Like that's what we used to shoot for every summer. That's what Coach Rad had us running for, and
Yep.
with winning the Rose Bowl or going to the Rose Bowl on our mind. So to hear like that students now look at the Rose Bowl and they're like, "Nah, like we've already done that," or "Nah, it's not a big
Yeah.
game." And the booster got not mad, but they were like kind of just indignant, just off of like, what do you mean? Like this is we wish we would have gone to a Rose Bowl when I was in school. Like we wish we would have went to a bowl game. We wish we would have got to 10 wins, like those types of things. And so what you say and bring it up, it was either Huff or D'Anthony talking about it, where you're like, and especially don't say that to the news or into a reporter, man. Keep that to yourself.
Yeah, like a couple of things on that. Like, hey, it's funny, like finding that balance of like, all right, you want to be real and authentic, but then I guess not being so real, so authentic that you say everything that's on your mind. But then also like to your prior point, my dad used to tell me stories like, and I guess the older I get, the more I can look back in history and appreciate things. Like my dad played in Minnesota at the Big Ten, and they never went to a bowl game. They were good, but it was just like a different time when the conference champion went to the Rose Bowl, and that was it. There was no other bowl game for anybody else. So he was like to your point, he dreamed of playing in the Rose Bowl, and they were like, maybe 8-2 and lost, one game in conference and no bowl game, and it's just like that's it, that's your season, like too bad. And so yeah, he used to dream of that, and so yeah, and then in Oregon, not now we're kind of like, oh yeah, like Oregon the national championship or bust every season, but that wasn't always the case. And a Rose Bowl would be huge, or even just a bowl game, conference championship, stuff like that. Versus now it's kind of like, well, if they're not undefeated and we're not the number one seed, I'm like, what are we doing? And so it's just funny how the expectations can kind of change things, and then you get spoiled with like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna go to the Rose Bowl. I'm been there, done that before. Like man, like this is the besides the national championship, the second biggest game in the history of the sport, basically. Like, but yeah, it's funny.
And so finishing up and wrapping and talking about Oregon, like I said, I was a senior, you were a freshman. You were pretty quiet, didn't drink, didn't smoke, if I remember correctly. As we talk about mentorship, we talk about going to a school, how important it is for the guys that came before you, what example they set, or just what you gained from them, or just how they treated you. What do you remember about our receiver room and just our relationship as being older receivers, and how do we treat you?
Yeah, no, I was super grateful for you and Jeff. I feel like you were more intentional and more vocal about like taking the younger guys under your wing and showing them around. Jeff, I think, kind of led by example and was just kind of like, hey, this is what it's going to look like to be like a top, high end receiver. This is what it's going to take as far as like weight room, 7-on-7, and like all that stuff. But both of you guys is being like confident enough in yourselves to be like, all right, I'm gonna like show somebody else how to get to where I'm at, who hopefully will be where I'm at one day. So like, having that like confidence in your own ability and that humility left a mark on me. And I think that was something like Oregon. Like one thing I was most impressive about was just like the culture at Oregon, starting with like all the coaches. Like most of the coaches had been there for like years and years and years, and were like were content being an Oregon coach. Like, they wanted to be there. Like our, like Coach Cam, the running back coach, was content being their Oregon running back coach. I don't think he ever had any aspirations of being a coordinator anywhere else. Same thing with, Coach Greatwood and Coach Aliotti and Coach Neal, some of the other coaches. But my point in saying that is to say that like there was a culture of like you get there, you stay there, you learn from somebody who came before you, and then you pass on what they taught you to the next generation. So I think you exemplified that of like, all right, I'm a senior. I got this young freshman coming in. I'm gonna teach him everything I know, and one day he's gonna be a senior. And he's gonna teach the young boys how to get down, and that's like playing ball, but also just like how to move around the campus, how to navigate social life, all that stuff. So really grateful that I had you to look up to for that year, and then you come back and work out in the off season and stuff like that. And it's a testament that here we are. I'm 33 years old now, so 15 or so years later, that we still have this relationship. It's not just like, oh, we're doing a podcast. It's like this really this is. I can hit you up whenever I go to LA and tap in with you, and it's a real relationship because it's authentic. So I'm super grateful for that mentorship I had and the fact that it's still strong all these years later.
Man, thank you for them good words, man. I didn't expect to get pumped up like that today, but outside of that, and I wasn't reaching for that answer either. But it's so important, man. Like I think people forget that when you have people come into your program, of course it's competitive. You got people that are trying to take your spot. Everybody wants to play. But more
Right.
so than that, if you're an older dude, like what do I want this place to look like when I'm gone? Like, what do I wanna see when I turn on the TV to watch these dudes play? I don't wanna see Eric dropping balls and running wrong routes and stuff like that, like and there's some pride aspect of knowing that, like, man, I taught him how to operate, and he was open enough to let me teach him how to operate as well, and that stuff matters, and like you said, you talked about Jeff, who's, didn't say much, but when he went out on that field, that white boy can play, man, and it's actually his it was actually his birthday the other day too, but you look at that, and I think that it's important because that talks about different types of leadership as well. There's a lead by example, there's the vocal type, there's the DBs, they're crazy. So they're like probably the most pit bullish where you're gonna hear them barking and doing push-ups during 7-on-7 from drop passes, and they're a little bit more aggressive. But outside of that, man, like I felt like we just had a really good group. And we had a little bit of everybody. Everybody was kind of in line, but you had LT in there who was the guy that you had to, hey, LT, we got a meeting, let's go. Like you had to pull him and drag him along and stuff sometimes. You even had Josh Huff who played as a true freshman, and I mean, he's athletic and still figuring stuff out. But outside of that, man, like when I look at you when you first came in, like I said, quiet, didn't drink really. You talked when we talked to you, but other than that, it wasn't. I was like, yeah, he's quiet, he's reserved. He reminds me of me, which is awesome. But like guys like that, man, you got to make them feel comfortable. And I remember what it was like. I graduated high school early. I came to college early, so I wasn't even with like I didn't come in. I
Yeah.
wasn't a part of the freshman class before me, and I wasn't really part of my freshman class that came in because I was there before.
Yeah.
And we forget sometimes that college, you're starting over. And there's some people that can be like, man, I ain't afraid of college. I ain't afraid of football. Like I've done this. But it's like you're getting put in a whole new environment with new people, 100 something guys, trying to figure out who's your friend, trying to figure out who you should follow, who you should learn from, and who's open to doing that. Like it's a really harsh environment to be in. And I mean harsh just as far as you're pretty much not remaking yourself, but you have the chance to figure out who do I want to be for these next 3 to 5 years as you're still growing as a young man and figuring that out. And so that's the thing I saw about you right off the bat. I said, man, Eric is. I was like, man, this is the type of dude we need in this program. These are the type of players that we need in this program. Hardworking, do whatever it takes to win. A person that you know is got your back, whether if it's out on the field or whether if it's in the streets when we go to a party. And those are the types of values and characteristics you showed as a young man. So I'm glad I was able to have you and be kind of that person for you for that year. And just knowing that when I did it for you, I knew that you were going to do it for countless others. And so that's also my secret reason why I did it. And when we talk about being at Oregon, we say, nothing lasts forever, nothing lasts for a long time. Transferring used to be very different back in our day. You had to get permission to transfer. You didn't have everybody transferring every year, every other year. But you transfer from Oregon and transfer to USF. What was the underlying reason behind you transferring?
Yeah, I just my whole life I had dreams of going to the NFL, and I was just the thought process was just trying to do whatever I could to get more opportunities. And it was a difficult decision to make. Like I always like to say this, like I'm not one of those guys that's like, oh my God, it wasn't fair. It was politics. They weren't playing. Like we had dogs to work in. That's why I wasn't playing. We had Josh Huff, Braylon Addison, Dwayne Stanford, Keenan Lowe, Devin Allen, Darren Carrington, like dogs, right? So it's like I was just trying to find a lane to get a couple more snaps here and there. Thought I might have a better chance somewhere else. So again, I like to say like I was just trying to find opportunities to play more. And the difficult thought process I had to weigh was just like I knew we had a really good team that year. I really felt like we had a chance to go to the championship that year, go back to the Natty, which we did. And so I was kind of having to weigh that decision, like, hey, do you want this experience? If you're probably going to be a role player, maybe you can earn some time. You might be on scout team, whatever, right? Somewhere in between. But versus kind of taking the selfish route of like, all right, you go somewhere else and maybe you can play more, maybe you can start, maybe you'll get more stats. Not guaranteed either, but like kind of having to weigh that out. But like ultimately, like I had to look myself in the mirror and say, like, my dream when I started playing football was to go to the NFL. Respectfully, it wasn't to like be a backup on a good team or to be a whatever. So I had to kind of like really look myself in the mirror and say, what do you want out of this experience? It helped that I was able to have the run my freshman year on the Natty, so I really did get that once in a lifetime opportunity with you guys my redshirt year. But yeah, I'm making a decision to say, hey, you have one last chance to go for your dream and your goal of trying to make it to the NFL. Obviously, to make the NFL, you got to put some plays on tape. You got to play. You got to have some production. So I made that choice to go to USF. It was different, like you said, back in the day. Now there's the transfer portal. You can probably like send your practice highlight tapes out and you get offers from I don't even know how it works now, but like back then it was still more of like a move in silence kind of vibe. So I remember like asking the coaches for permission, but not really keeping it pretty DL. I went and took a visit to USF, which was just like 10 minutes from my house in Tampa. just drove over there one day and kind of made it happen, kind of real low key. In hindsight, maybe it would have been better to have like a more open situation and take some visits, but like that wasn't how the game was back then. But yeah, that was kind of like my thought process and what happened, and it was an extremely difficult decision. And I remember my last day in Oregon saying goodbye to Keenan Lowe and Kenny Bassett and a couple of my close friends, and then leaving their place and just crying back to when I was driving back to my apartment for the last time. Like a little 10-minute drive from their spot to my spot, and like I didn't regret what I was doing, but just like knowing, like, dang man, like this is a tough decision that you had to make, and here it is. And so yeah, I remember there was a song by Little Boosie called "Show the World," and I remember listening to that song in the car and just crying, and being like, all right, man, you got to show the world, you made the right decision. So yeah, I haven't thought about that in a while, but that was kind of where I was at in my life at that point.
I see you getting a little choked up there now, having to relive it and talk about it and think about it. You like, oh man, hold on, Drew. I got something in my eye real quick. I was natural in there. Nah, thank you for being vulnerable, man. I always thank people when they're vulnerable and really talk about their feelings, man, because you spent 4 years there. You spend 4 years in a place, you make some friends, you have some friendships, you have some blood, sweat, and equity in the school that you were at. And now you have to make a real decision. And not that it's about money or any, like, you wanted to go play for your last year. And that's
Yeah,
not something that should be taken lightly because you say, all right, I think about it. I'm probably not going to the NFL. Like, I would like to just play and serve a bigger purpose to help my team for my last year playing college football. So I 100% understand that. And so, how was when you transfer, you get to USF, how was your final year of playing football?
And it sucked. I'll be real, it's awful, man. I worked really hard that offseason to kind of get in shape and to try to hopefully, compete and earn some playing time. And things happen for a reason. Things just didn't go my way. Uh, not making excuses, but I had a little some injuries in camp, stuff like that. So you're not getting the right rhythm you want. And then I remember hurting my shoulder, like maybe early in the year, just kind of battling injuries and just never really got to that rhythm. Our team wasn't great that year. The next year, the USF was really good, so I got there a year early, I guess. So it was rough, but I almost feel like I needed it to be that bad for me to know that football was over. Like I think if they would have been kind of okay, I would have I started for a few games and got a couple touchdowns. Maybe I can play again in the NFL. Maybe I can go to Canada. I think I would have hung on, but it was so bad. From myself, I didn't play as well as I should have. Our team wasn't as good as we could have been. All the different things, injuries, etc. To where I was like, man, this sucks, and I think I'm done with football. And I think I needed to have it be that bad, so I could have that break. It's almost like if you have you're dating somebody and it's like, oh, we just kind of grew apart. It'd be hard to break up. For instance, if you caught her cheating on you, all right, this is it. It's a wrap. So it was kind of like that moment for me where it's all right, this sucks. It's over. So and I didn't enjoy it while I was going through it. It was a tough year, but I think it was necessary, in my journey and looking back at my my life journey.
Man, that's crazy because that's is so much about where growth comes from. Growth comes from facing adversity and getting through it. And you talked about being a year late slash a year early. You leave Oregon the next year, they go to the national championship. You thought they were going to have a really good team, you know what I mean? And they end up doing that. Get to USF, don't have the best of time or the year to wrap up your career. Then they have a excellent year the year after that, and you're like, well, is it me? Am I holding the team back? You got to look within yourself now.
Right.
But I think that's awesome to be honest about it, where you're like, yo, in sports, you're gonna have injuries. That's the tough thing to say about it. I ended up tore my ACL in college, got hurt in the NFL, and sometimes by result of me getting hurt or somebody else getting hurt, it opened up a position. But it's definitely not the way you want to end your career, because you're like, yo, I'm trying to put together my best year here and I got to fight through everything like this. So I'm glad you got to go somewhere else, and I'm glad you got to do something different and go out on a limb and kind of chase it. Which a lot of people are afraid to do. They're afraid of some change, so they'll stay in a situation that feels comfortable because they know what result they can get. But you went outside of that comfort zone and chased something and went and found another identity for Eric Dungy, which I think is above most things the best and most important part of that whole situation. And I think right now we'll pivot because I think it's a very important point. So you hear the name Eric Dungy, and for those in the football circle, know Tony Dungy, which would be Eric's dad, father, head coach, first African American to win the Super Bowl. Um, so how hard is it, or is it hard, to be Tony Dungy's son?
There were no bigger expectations than the expectations I had for myself, and that may have been my own toxic trait, maybe. I think I was hyper aware, too aware. I'm not saying it's too aware. That's just, yeah, it is who I am. That I am who I am. I have that self awareness. And so I just remember from a young age always being all right, walking in this room, knowing that people know who I am and knowing that people, all that stuff. So I just always have that awareness and always, and especially knowing with sports, sports is a meritocracy, you earn your spot. But I always wanted to I was always hyper aware about wanting to just be another teammate or be another guy that just earned my spot like everybody else. And so I just always felt like I had to prove myself that Johnny Jones is over there starting because he's Johnny Jones, and Timmy Smith is starting because he's Timmy Smith. But then it's always Eric Dungy, Tony Dungy's son, and it's man, I just wanted to I just want to be Eric Dungy, my whole life. And that goes to just off the field, in life and everything like that. Always just trying to I just want to have just real friends, and genuine friends and genuine teammates. And I just want people in my life to appreciate me for who I am. And so, like I said, I always probably put nobody else could put higher expectations on me than I did myself, and that could wear on me at times. It was really hard my junior year at Plant that was that year I transferred and kind of had that culture shock. And part of it too, like I just wanted to be a normal kid and kind of fit in. And I was going to a school, I was going to plant, and I didn't live in the school district. I had like a special waiver to go to school, which like wasn't a big deal because I filled it out and they approved it. But but it got like leaked out, so then it became a big deal. But so that like I just want to be like I just want to go under the radar, you know. But then once that kind of like my spot blew up, you know, I just kind of like I'm like, dang, bro, everybody knows I got a special privilege, but I just want to be a normal kid. And then you know I'm just trying to like fit in at school and stuff like that, and we're going to like 7-on-7, and the other teams are talking shit like, oh man, you should have chose our school, you should have like you know whatever, right? Just like so I just it was this difficult like I just, my whole life I just want to fit in and be like everybody else and be liked for being me, and so having that little asterisk, if you will, next to my name, and then me always trying to combat that and overcompensate and prove myself, it definitely can kind of wear on you, especially as in your adolescence. Like I think now as a 33-year-old, I'm very confident in who I am. I know I can be Eric and just be in a room and just be Eric, or if I'm in a situation where I need to leverage my name, I can leverage my name and know that that doesn't like, define me. But as a 15-year-old, as a 16-year-old, like it's a little harder to like have that, you know, awareness. And so just definitely just challenging, just growing up and trying to figure out who I am and figure out who want to be for me and all those different things.
It's funny because you talk about leveraging your name. So there are some times where you're like, hey, it'll benefit me to say exactly who I am and who I'm affiliated with. And
Yeah,
sometimes you're like, hold on, let me just hold on to that and keep that close to the vest because I'm trying to. And what you said is 100% on, man. As you, like you said, as a 15, 16-year-old, you want to make your own name or you don't want people to associate you with something and accept you because of that. Like, I want you guys to be my friend because you like me, like not because of who my dad is or who my dad might be. um and it's interesting that when you speak, you know, of your dad or just of your situation, you're like, yo, I'm still it was something you had to work through, and that's also hard to kind of have to work through on your own. Did your dad ever tell you anything along the way or before any certain point in time that made you a little bit easier about this identity?
no, never really did. I'm trying to think. I'll say this, like he never really like forced me to play ball or to follow any kind of you know path or anything like that. It was always very hands off. If anything, like too hands off. Where it's like, man, like you know, like you know, thinking too about football. Maybe you could coach me up a little bit, Dad. Like you know, but like it was kind of just like, no, like you got it. Like you have your own coach. Like he can help you. Like you know, I don't want to. Like, I don't want to overstep on your coaches and like you know whatever, right? So he never really gave me any like advice about that. And maybe in hindsight, maybe I could have asked to like talk about that kind of stuff a little bit more. But I was just no, I mean, he just kind of let me do my thing. He was kind of the parent. His kind of thing is like he's not going to make me do anything, but then like once I choose to do something, he's going to like encourage me to like you know stick it through and do my best. And so whether that was like football or chess or you know whatever, you know, I'm saying like any sport or activity, any hobby, you know, just kind of encourage me to like give my all. But he didn't have any specific, I guess, advice about how to handle being his own son or anything like that. I did, interestingly enough, just throughout the years, I meet you know different people who are in that similar situation, whether that's like DJ Strawberry or Drew Davis, not you, but the son of Butch Davis. Trying to think of other kids that I kind of grew up alongside, where you kind of meet them at different events. Kind of like, oh, okay, like Austin Parker, Eugene Parker's son, just different people like that, where it's like kind of meet them and kind of like, okay, we have this shared experience. Like, there's no blueprint for the lives we're living, but like, there's a little solace knowing that like we're kind of doing the same game. We're trying to figure out how to like become ourselves and like you know like we enjoy some of the benefits of that our parents have done for us, and but also still like want to be ourselves and want to be our own people. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but
Nah, man, you definitely did because it's interesting. Like you hear about, you know, some coaches probably being too hands-on. And in this situation, you're like, yo, dad, help. Like, I need give me some football advice, give me some head coach and dad advice that I could have and put in this tool belt that I have. And not to speak for your dad or anything, but in his mind, he's probably like, well, you know, I don't want him to feel any pressure that he has to, you know, impress me with football or that I have to teach him the things he knows. Let me let his coaches coach him, like the people that we've signed him up to play with. Like they know what they're doing. I trust them as well. And so, but it's just interesting to hear your take on it because your position and your perspective is valid because that's what you've been through. That's what you saw. And you talked about it. You said, well, maybe I could have asked him. Yeah, but that's also, you don't put that on, a 15, 16-year-old to say, hey, well, when you need help or when you need something, like, come and tell me. Like, dad is always going to be dad. There was this very interesting story. I don't know if you remember it, but Coach Kelly was talking to us one day in college at Oregon. And he said, he said he talked to your dad at one point, and your dad told him, like, hey, Eric came to me and he was so excited on something you guys taught him. And I was like, yeah, Eric, that's what I've been trying to tell you for a while. And then and then Coach Kelly said, you said, yeah, but you're just dad. Like, which in a sense is true. Did that story happen?
Yeah, I can't remember that specifically. I feel like it happened. I know one of my business mentors told me a similar story with like a business kind of philosophy, and so I feel like it definitely happened. Just the idea that like yeah, like you grow up with your dad, 18 years, 20 years, whatever. Like as far as under their roof, they're telling you the same things, the same stories, the same coaching points, if you will. And you start to tune them out, like, all right, Dad, we get it. We're not going to spend more than we have. We're not going to live, all right, okay, Dad, we do our chores, we're going to work hard, okay. But then all of a sudden, like whether it's especially when it's somebody who has the access to that you want, whether it's a coach or a mentor who's doing something that you want to get to, like in Chip's case, he's the coach, he's going to lead us toward the my athletic future. And I'm like, oh man, this coach just said something, like what's the word, just like revolutionary. And then like that's like, yeah, like just telling you to work hard and do your best. Like I've been saying the same thing. I'm like, yeah, but he said it differently, like, so I don't know if I believe it. I don't know. I can't remember the specifics, but like I believe that. I believe it for sure.
Yeah, so I just remember that from a long time ago, and I was like, essentially, like, yeah, if we look at this dude as Tony Dungy, Super Bowl winning head coach, head coach with Peyton Manning and Jeff Saturday on the team and stuff like that. But before you knew him as a head coach, you knew him as dad. You know what I mean? Like, there's no like, I don't know how to put that, but like, it's like, nah, like, and then along the lines of you growing up, you figured out like, oh, my dad's important. Like, this isn't, my life isn't normal. Like, where his position is, he's one of 32 head coaches in the NFL. And so you growing up in and around NFL circles, what was that like? What was that life like?
It was pretty cool. Like I mean, I touched on some of the negatives as far as like your insecurities with your friendships and stuff like that, but like the positives like far outweigh the negatives. I mean, I think just from like a unique experience standpoint, I mean, like sometimes like it's hard to even like really reflect on because it was just so normal. But like pretty much every time I didn't have school, I would just go to work with my dad. So that was like Christmas, spring, summer, random day off, whatever, right? So it was just like anytime I had a chance, I was just in the locker room, and I was just watching practice, watching film, hanging out with the guys. So just like the ability to like have those unique experiences, to see what professionals look like, see what they train like, see how they talk. Also, just to meet, like you got to think of how diverse the NFL locker room is. So I grew up in my pretty homogenous gated community, but then I go to the NFL locker room and there's dudes from the hood, there's dudes from the south, there's dudes from the north, there's people that are married with kids, there's dudes that are young and single that are closer to my age than they are to their teammates' age. So it's like you get all different experiences, which that was really cool for me. And then of course, just like thinking about like being on the sideline during the Super Bowl, going on the team plane to all the away games, going to the SB Awards. I'm just trying to think of just meeting Michael Jordan in the locker room, but like not even thinking to take a picture because of just why would I even just something like that where it's just like it was just like being Spike Lee on the sideline and like, but like and asking him if I could get a role in a movie, but just that was like my life. It was just like, oh yeah, it's my dad's friend. He makes movies, so I'm gonna try to see if I can get him in a movie, even though I've never taken a drama class. But like, why would I? Not? Like it's just like, and so like I hadn't even thought about that in a long time. But just things like that, where it's like everyday experiences that were just so normal that you just kind of went with the flow. And yeah, and my parents had a really good job about like we did stuff like that, but we also like my dad drove like a Dodge Ram, and we'd fill the car with $20 at a time. And so it was like we were still pretty humble, pretty normal, even though we did some of this cool stuff. Like you kind of there was a nice balance of like it didn't feel like not normal, if that makes sense. Though it felt like it wasn't like I hear about some certain people, certain lifestyles, and certain neighborhoods, and you feel like, oh, that's not even like real life. But like it definitely felt like real life growing up. It felt Like I would go on the away game, go on the team plane, and then fly back home and go to school on Monday, and it would just be like, and just go back to like my other life and just being a kid and going, whatever. And it was just like, it was all part of it.
I like what you said. You go back to school on Monday and go be a kid. Like, yeah, because I am a kid. Like that's the
Yeah.
life I had. That's the life I was living.
Yeah.
But no, you said you guys are from the car he drive to the amount of money you guys are putting in the tank. I know I don't know no Coach Dungy like that, but I read his book Quiet Strength, and I know he's written a couple very faith-based books, and his coaching is very different than a lot of coaches back then and a lot of coaches now, to the point where families and children were welcomed into the locker room. I'm not sure if it was practice on Friday or Saturday or whichever one it is. You can tell me. Um, but like that makes a difference in the type of team that you build and the type of team you have. And considering even now you're very humble in how you move from a day to day basis, from the work that you do, from the house and crib that you're building and that you have. So with you being around these NFL circles, playing and being around NFL guys and professional athletes, I know a story about something that happened at one point in time that could have got this player in trouble or cut. His name is Cliff Crosby. Do you want to talk and tell that story, man? Because
Yeah.
I
I'll
definitely
tell you
want
the
to I
story.
definitely want to laugh about that.
I think this story kind of honestly personifies like my dad's coaching, like parenting and coaching, like mindset, like in a nutshell, perfectly. So this is when he was coaching the Colts early on, like maybe his first or second year coaching the Colts. Training camp was at Terre Haute, Indiana, at some school. I can't remember if it was Indiana State or something like that, but it was like a small, whatever school. And so they have you're on the college campus during training camp, and you're staying in the dorms, and they have like a gym and the basketball court and racquetball court, and so the guys mess around in between practice, stuff like that. So I'm in the racquetball court, and Cliff Crosby's in there, and he whacked me upside the head with a racquetball racket, totally on accident, smacks me and like hits me in the head. And like right then and there, I think Cliff's thinking like, "Oh, I'm never playing the NFL again. I'm getting cut on the spot. I'm done." Cliff like picks me up, like puts me on his shoulder, like runs me to the training room, and it's like, "Yo, everybody else, like stop what you're doing, Coach. I just hit Coach's son. Like we got to figure it out. Like we got to get him right. Um, you got to like, whatever, right?" So then I can't remember how that ended. I'm giving an ice pass or whatever. I'm fine. And then I think Cliff says that like later on that day, he's like in the elevator, and it's just him and my dad, and he's just like shook like the whole time, like scared that like Coach is gonna, like I said, cut him right on the spot. But the funniest thing to me is that like if you know my dad, he was mad at me. Like he wasn't even worried about Cliff. He's like, over like, why was your head in the way? Why did you get your head? Why is your head by his racket? And why are you causing a scene? Why are you crying in front of the locker room now? So it was like I knew that Cliff wasn't in trouble, and like and like that him hitting me with a racket wasn't going to have anything to do with his spot on the team. But I think maybe from other coaches being like in like a more non-family friendly environment and maybe a more uptight environment, like he probably was scared for his future and his life. So I still laugh about that to this day. But yeah, he thought he was done, and I wish I could tell them like, no, my dad's probably happy that you hit me in the head with a racquetball.
So that's one of the great things about being able to hang with professional athletes. Like you're like, yo, I'm really this dude could probably kill me and crush me, or this dude had 3 interceptions last week, but he's sitting right here next to me playing racquetball. Um, and so I remember me and Cliff, we were sitting down at dinner for the trust who I work with. And I remember I forgot he started talking about it. And then I think he said, can't remember if he told the story, then I told him I knew you or vice versa. And he was like, yo, I thought for sure that was my last week in the NFL. But like once you like you said, more so speaking to your dad, like I don't, and I'll ask you this question: Have you ever heard your dad yell? Has he yelled?
Oh yeah.
Okay, all right.
Oh yeah. It's funny. People say that like we were. I was, I was a decent kid. I tried my best, but I got in trouble. My siblings are all very bad and get in trouble all the time. So, my dad raises his voice plenty of times. He's handed me up a few times. People are like, "Oh, your dad's so stoic and so calm." I'm like, yeah, he'll whoop you too if you talk back to your mom too. So that's definitely happened. Me and my older brother got spankings, and we got all that.
I'm laughing at the shameless plug of you putting it on the brothers and sisters. Like, yeah, we got some bad. I got some bad brothers and sisters. I'm not that bad, but we got some bad brothers and sisters. So they probably cause pops to be like that. But like I said, that's the difference between Tony Dungy, the dad, and Tony Dungy, the coach. And I think there's value in knowing that. Like you said, nah, he's hitting me up. Don't let him get it twisted. Not to throw Coach Dungy under the bus or anything. But like, you've lived with him and he had him in your life for 33 years now. Like you said, I'm pretty sure I made some smart decisions, and I'm pretty sure I've made some not so smart decisions along the way. And going into this last part, so circling up out of that, you are a luxury realtor, works with a lot of professional athletes, work with the I was about to say Buffalo Bills, work for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't know why my mouth was like fixed to even say that. And so you got into that life. So let's say after college, you're trying to figure out your journey. You're trying to figure out, yo, what do I like to do? What was that process like, just graduating college and trying to really sit down and say, yo, what do I even want to do moving forward?
Yeah, man, it was a interesting one. Kind of just like that was obviously like kind of coming out of my last football season, which was a very frustrating and not glamorous and not sexy year of my life. And then I remember we had our last game, which was like Thanksgiving weekend. I think I played one play, whatever. So my last game of my career, like, it's over. And I flew back to Oregon to go just kind of spend some time with my boys. They were getting ready for that Rose Bowl national championship run. And I'm sitting on Kenny Batts' futon. And I like remember waking up and being like, for the first time in, before high school, really, where I don't have anything to look forward to, right? Like I don't have next season or next game or okay, now it's basketball season, now it's track season, whatever, right? Nothing. And I remember just thinking like what am I gonna do? Like yeah, I'm decently smart, but like I don't really have like anything I'm super interested in at this point. I have a degree, but I don't necessarily know where that's going to take me. I'm not super passionate about the what I have my degree in, and so definitely kind of just being like really unsure and like definitely a darker time. And then I'm really thankful my older sister had an internship for me. It was a social media internship, and it was just something that I like. It was just like low enough. I was like, okay, I can with my limited skill set and limited experience, I think I can do some tweets and some Instagram posts or whatever. I can do that. Like so, it kind of just showed me like, all right, like you can do something, and it just gave me like enough hope that like, all right, like you got to figure out how to like get your resume tightened up and figure out how to apply for this internship, and then me and my sister's older than me, and like college grads can kind of help me with some of that stuff and help me how to prep for the interview. But it kind of just gave me that like hope of like, all right, like there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is life after sports, and even though it is small, $8 an hour minimum wage internship, it is something to like show you that you can do something more than after football. And so that was like kind of the beginning of that process. I ended up doing that internship for like 6 months. It's funny, I tell the story, like I went to the internship with like with an athlete mindset, like all right, there's like 10 other interns in this little crew. I'm like, oh, I'm killing him, killing her. Like, I kind of went into it like, all right, like using my competition, like cool. He comes a little bit late, or he slaps out sometimes, or whatever. I'm just like, like I'm gonna find all their weaknesses and I'm gonna get them right. And then at the end of the 6 months or whatever, like the bosses were kind of just like, all right, we appreciate your time, like see you later. And I kind of like realized like, okay, like football and corporate world aren't quite the same. And now it's kind of me beginning to realize that I need to be an entrepreneur, and that working for somebody wasn't going to satisfy me. I tried a couple other things. I was like trying to apply for some different jobs and stuff like that. And like during that process of like, I don't know if you've ever done that where when you apply for a job and then you're ready to go, you're hungry, you like want to hear back like that second, and then they're like, all right, yeah, we'll call you in a couple of weeks. We have an interview next month, and then we'll talk about it. Then the boss is going on vacation, and then and you're like, what? Like I'm trying to go today, So just doing those processes, like I said, kind of made me realize I need to be an entrepreneur. So I had a mentor who encouraged me to get my real estate license, and that's what I did. So I got my license, and I think maybe the age of 24, I want to say, so like a year and a half or so after college, after playing ball. And initially, I wanted to just be a home flipper and flip houses and just kind of be like the TV shows like Flipper Flop or Property Brothers or the different shows like that. In my mind, I was like, I don't want to work for anybody. I don't want anybody to hold me back. It's all on me. And that was kind of like the original vision. And then some doors closed, and just didn't go that route. And I kind of went more towards the sales side. And I had another mentor who told me that people work with people they know, like, and trust. So I was like, all right, who knows me, likes me, and trusts me? And I went to like family and friends and former teammates, and started calling, kind of calling my friends and my family and friends and saying, hey, I'm in real estate. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm doing. And if you need, you need any help, give me a call. And 9 years later, now I have this sexy sports entertainment business. I'm working with athletes and blah 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 blah. But it was really just kind of starting the low hanging fruit of like, all right, like, who already knows me and likes me, and how can I get them to trust me as a professional? And that's kind of my real estate journey. Fast forward 9 years later, here we are.
I think that's funny, man. You talk about being an athlete. You said having that athlete mindset. I'm gonna kill him. I got him. He comes late. He don't be finishing his work and turn. He don't pay attention in the meetings. Um, but it's funny because we've been playing sports so long, or we played football so long, and then all of a sudden one day it's over, and whether that's you went to pro day or the combine, or what I mean, got skipped over on draft day when things become more clear, but you've literally been doing something. I don't know how long you played for. How long did you play
I mean,
football in
yeah,
general?
my first time playing was, I think, third grade. I didn't play every year, but that was my first time playing, and I
Okay.
played started sixth grade until age 22 every year.
Okay. So we're talking third grade, probably around 8, 9 years old, all the way up until your early 20s, like you said, every single year, you know what you're doing. And you graduate college, and now for the first time, it's like, I don't have workouts tomorrow morning. I don't have workouts next week. I don't have workouts next month. I don't have a
Mhm.
season to prepare for next month. Like, and then you start to really think about life. And not to say we're at a disadvantage only because we've been focusing on something for so long. And even when I got out of the NFL, like, I felt like I was behind everybody, like my friends and other people in the industry, because you look at it like, I only played 4 years, or I try not to say only. I played
Only
4 years.
4 years, man. I would have loved to play 4 years in the NFL, Drew. I would have loved to play only 4 years.
I played 4 years. I got to stop saying that. I played 4 years. And when I got done, not that I wasn't good at anything else, but like, I just felt like other people were in front of me. They'd done internships, they had done entry level positions, things of that nature. And I'm sitting here as the football player, and not to say I characterize myself like that, but I'm still trying to figure out what skills I hold to be able to be valuable in a work setting, if that makes sense. So, even like you said, you got the low hanging fruit of social media manager. Was coaching ever in the cards for you? I know there was an opportunity, but was coaching in the cards for you once you got done playing football at the collegiate level?
That's a funny story. So like growing up, like obviously the main dream is to play football and be a receiver and catch a billion touchdown passes. But like, of course, with my dad being a coach, like I've thought about coaching too, right? Of course, like even as a kid, you realize that even Jerry Rice retired at 40, So like I realized, like, like even the dream would end at some point, right? So I always kind of thought about coaching a little bit. And I played for a really good high school coach. We had an awesome program. So like I always thought about, like, all right, I'm the coach, like what would we do? How would we, what are our rituals? What's our routine? What's our practice going to be like? Stuff like that. So it was always in the back of my mind. The year that I had USF, like I said, was just like a non-enjoyable year from like a football standpoint. I kind of fell out of the love of football that year. And so when I was doing my real estate classes, it's funny, an opportunity came up with football, but I was still a little scarred from it. And I was so basically how it kind of all went down. That it was, I can't remember the season now. It might have been 2015. Chip Kelly was coaching the Eagles. I want to say that maybe his second year there. But he brought my dad in to speak to the team during training camp, and that's all I thought it was. I think that's all it really was going to be. And he asked if I want to come and just spend the day and hang out with the team. Didn't think anything of it, so we flew out there, and I sat in on some meetings, watched practice. My dad gave a little speech at the end of practice. At the time, a couple of Oregon players were on the staff. A couple of Oregon players were playing for the Eagles, so it was, I hung out that day, went and got a cheesesteak with Josh Huff or whatever, like just some light vibes. And then I think a day or two later, maybe a week or two later, one of the support staff members offered me a quality control role, which is basically like the very entry level job in the NFL, kind of like breaking down film and kind of just doing what the other coaches would need you to do. And I think 99.9% of humans would have like jumped at the opportunity and been like, yeah, like sign me up. Where do I start? But like, I think because I still had a little bit of like the bad taste in my mouth from football, from my career not going how I wanted to go, my last season not being the greatest experience. And then also kind of like knowing that like I do have this connection, and like if I do want to like try my hand at coaching like a year or two from now, I probably could, maybe pull some strings and get another job, somewhere else. Right? I basically just said, I started my real estate classes already. I kind of believe in like seeing things through when you start them, and so I've already started this class. And I kind of want to at least try real estate. If I follow my face, maybe next year I can get another quality control job somewhere else, or maybe be a GA in college, whatever. And so I passed on the job in the NFL, which I think when I said that out loud, it's like sounds crazy. But part of it was because I knew what I wanted out of life, and while my dad was like pretty consistent, like he coached for maybe I guess 5 teams: Steelers, Chiefs, Vikings, Bucks, and Colts. Overall, that's not too many compared to like the average NFL coach. Still, I like really value consistency and community. And I kind of like didn't want to be in a position where I was like, oh, I'm gonna be in Philly this year, San Francisco next year, Indianapolis 3 years from now, and I'm like moving around and like, and so all these kind of factors led me to say, I'm gonna pass on this opportunity to coach. I want to like establish a life in Tampa. I have this kind of dream and vision of real estate and what I can do with it. And if it doesn't work, I can try coaching next year or the year after that. And that was a choice I made 9 years ago, and I haven't looked back.
You're 100% right that 99.9% of people would have been like, yes, where do I sign? When can I move here? Where's my desk at? But like you said, and I think that's an important thing for athletes to know. Like, you talked about the sore spot that you have with football, with kind of how your career ended, or just not the way you wanted it to end, to be able to jump back in with football and have this relationship with it. And I think that's very important. I think a lot of athletes go through that where they're done doing something and it seems like you've given so much time to something and it didn't necessarily reach the level of the heights that you wanted it to reach. And
Yeah.
so with that, I ain't watching no college football, man. I ain't watching no Oregon games. I ain't watching those no South Florida games. Like, don't even say the word football around me. But you said one interesting thing, man. You said you had already started on your real estate license and you wanted to see it through, you wanted to finish it. And you even said, like, yo, if I fall flat on my face, then I'll circle back to this opportunity, or hopefully this opportunity will pop up again. And so you're always saying these very interesting things, which is about life. Life is a lot about adversity, but also how you come back from that adversity. And like you said, you went to this opportunity. You didn't take it as an opportunity. You thought you were just going to chill with pops, hear him talk, be around the team, and you get offered a position that you ultimately had to turn down. But like you said, you look at your career and how your trajectory's gone. You ended up doing pretty well for yourself, man. I think you made the right decision.
I appreciate it. Yeah. I mean, I like to think that if I had gone into coaching, I could have had success as well. But yeah, I think there's there's like there's different ways to be successful, and you can just choose one lane and just lean into it. And you can, so like I just chose this way and just tried to make the most of this journey and not think about what if and kind of like what if I'd done that. So I appreciate you saying that, man. But yeah, I just want to be all in on real estate. Like I was all in for football, and that's one thing too. Is like you mentioned like my lifestyle and stuff like that. Like I wasn't a partier in college or anything like that. And I was pretty locked in. So like when football was over, although I wish I could have done more, I didn't regret because I felt like I gave everything I had. Like I wasn't a guy to skip workouts. I wasn't a guy to go party or do anything like that. So I feel like I made the most of my opportunity. Anything maybe I could have just caught the ball more or whatever, right? But like I tried everything I could do, right? So it's like so when I was able to leave football and like with a little bit of peace, being like, all right, man, you really gave it all you had. You even transferred to another school to try to give another chance. It still didn't work out for you. So like you can let it go, man. It's okay. And you can make it doing something else. And again, it was just a little social media manager. And at that time, when I'm sitting on the futon in the dark in Kenny's apartment, and I'm like, all right, maybe I'll be a social media manager for the rest of my life. Like it's just like you don't know like what's out there, but you're like, all right, it's something, and this is so it's like you just need that like that one thing to get you to like wake up to that first step, and then and then be open to like where life can go from there. Like I said, like even when I got into real estate, I thought I was gonna be like a flipper and have like have my own little small little like house renovation business, and then I kind of like pivoted towards more of this like athlete representation thing. But it's just like you have to take that first step and then be open minded from there.
Man, you just talked about it. So you say you're in real estate, you're a realtor right now, and you keep on bringing up this passion. You said, I thought I'm gonna flip houses and renovate them and do this and do that. You got a nice, very nice crib right now. And and you're doing some renovations on it. Like every time I see you on Instagram, I see some bathroom getting changed around this, but and I'm like, man, that's look nice. How much does that passion project come into what you're doing now and just how you're treating your space as a whole?
Yeah. So what's really cool is like I definitely like I said when I first got into the business, I like wanted like to do some renovation, do some developing, and kind of like just be creative, be able to express myself that way. It didn't necessarily like work out, when I first got into the business, and I kind of went more on the traditional sales route. But over the last few years, just through some partnerships and different things like that, I've been able to, with my own personal house and then also with the house that I'm building to sell, have a chance now to do some of that stuff and kind of express myself that way. And it's really cool. I like to think I had decent taste already. And then the last 9 years being in really nice homes all day, every day, and kind of helping people find their dream homes, you kind of like get some ideas. And you're like, ooh, okay, like I like that. Ooh, okay, I like those floors over there. That's quartz. I didn't know about. Okay, yeah. So it's like all of a sudden you get some ideas, and so yeah, like with my home, I was able to buy a home that it was a nice home when I first bought it, but it had some opportunities to be upgraded, and so I was able to do some things. And then for better or worse, after the hurricane, my whole house got needed to be demolished, not demolished, but gutted basically. So for better or worse, I had another opportunity to have turn my house to a blank slate. But it's been a blessing in that standpoint that I've been able to kind of express myself creatively, and then the development, that's been a really cool opportunity. I ended up partnering with somebody who I played football with at USF, so it's like you never know, where you're going and why you're going places. But I ended up meeting somebody who I met there who was also a fifth-year player. When I went there, we met in an entrepreneurship class, and we kind of stayed in touch. And we own a rental property together. Without kind of getting into the weeds, we were able to basically refinance the rental property and put money into this vacant land, and then we got a loan to develop the house. And so we've been able to basically from scratch build a really cool modern 4,100 square foot modern house. So it's really cool. Like we picked up all the finishes, all the designs. It's a one of one, so it's not like we just picked up like a floor plan off the line. It's something we made up, and after hours of looking at different ideas online and redoing the plans and changing things. So it's really gratifying, and it's a fun experience. And it's cool that like I said, 8-9 years ago, I had this kind of dream of doing some more development, and then that didn't happen initially, but like the opportunities are now coming up. So it's cool that like just because something's a no at the time doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Sometimes you just gotta wait until those opportunities can come up later.
Man, just because it's a no at a time doesn't mean the opportunities aren't going to come up later. Ah, dropping bars on us today, ED. And so 9 years in the game, like I said, you put in a lot of hard work to get to where you are, to get to these ideas and these concepts to fruition. Um, and I was, we've like you said, we've had a relationship for a while. I've seen you when you were hustling, bustling from one listing to another, working 5, 6, 7 days a week, just doing all this stuff to finally be on pace to be like, okay, I can work from home today for a little bit. Like you're finally at that level of kind of just, but you're still
But
working is the whole point. What has been I don't want to say so, like I said, being so busy as you are, how do you keep a work-life balance with just how demanding your job could be and also how demanding or what's the correct word to say it? How pushy that your clients also might be. How do you keep that work-life balance?
So it's funny. I actually did talk to my dad a lot about this. I was really struggling with the work-life balance and just the mental health aspect of it during like coming out of the pandemic, like 2020, 2021, 2022. If people remember, like the real estate market was crazy at the time, which like you think, oh, the market was crazy, you must have been balling, like, and like, yeah, I was making more money than I had previously, but like it was really stressful because it was kind of like a 7 day a week. and like the house hit the market, and it's already got an offer, and you got to go see it that day, and you got to drop her in that day, and like everything was very time sensitive. And I really struggled with that because I was talking to my dad, kind of like, how do you deal with it? And he was like, basically, what we kind of like for him, it was like, he has the season, or he had the season where it was 7 days a week from training camp until Super Bowl. Then he had an off season, so he kind of knew he could pace himself. And so what was hard in real estate, there's not a defined season and off season. It's not like, okay, January it gets going and then July slows down. Like it can sometimes, but sometimes it could be interest rates, it could be tariffs, it could be, just the weather. There's a million different things that like can make real estate pop or not pop. But what I kind of had to like tell myself is like when it's time to get it, you just got to get it, and like just trust that there will be a slow time. Like you don't know when it's going to be. It may be 3 months from now, it may be next week, it may be 6 months from now, but like there will be a slow time. And then knowing that there's going to be highs and lows, to accept the slow times as they are. So like even like a day like today, like I had to work on Saturday. Today's Monday. I had to work on Saturday. So like I woke up today a little bit later, and like I could be like, oh man, you're tripping. It's Monday. It's you're behind the eight ball. But it's like, Eric, you had to work on Saturday. You can't be work so many days, and you have to give yourself a little bit of grace that it's not normal to work 7 days a week every week. And if you work on the weekend, you should take a day off on the week, or maybe you take a half day off during the week. So it's things like that. And then even just like little kind of mini vacations during the day. So it may be a busy time where I can't take the full a day off or anything like that. But if I could take 2 hours off to go for a bike ride, maybe from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and then go back to my 5 o'clock appointment. It's like finding that little mini break during the day if I can't afford to take a full day off or a full weekend off or whatever, right? So it's hard, but just trying to have the right perspective, that knowing that like there's going to be highs and lows, and there's going to be busy times and down times, and then just not being like guilty when I had to take some time, where find that like that time of like flow, or like that time of balance, just allowing myself to have some time off basically.
Man, you hit it. I call it stealing time, man. Like we always think, oh man, I gotta have a full day off to be able to do everything I want to do. It's like, no, like there are 24 hours in a day. You might be really busy, but like I said, with your career, you might have a show on at this time, but you got a 2, 3 hour break here. So I love that you said you'll find time to go ride my bike for 2 hours and then go here, or take a half day on this day, or if I'm working through the weekend, make sure I get one day off during the week. And I know everybody doesn't have the luxuries to to move their schedule and stuff around like that. But just finding time in your day for you, because at the end of the day, if you burn out doing this and working, you're no good to anybody. Like that's just the way it is and the way it's round up to be. And I
On
would be
that,
remiss and I
I'll
go
sorry,
ahead. No, go ahead.
yeah, no, just on that burnout thing, I had a business coach. He kind of mentioned this idea of what he called the digital detox, and this is the idea that like like a lot of us, our worst habit is like look at your phone up until the very last second before you fall asleep, and the first thing you do is pull your phone back out and get right back on it. And so like I'm not saying I do this every day, but what I strive to do is like usually after I brush my teeth, it's like kind of that's like my time to like, all right, like phone's done. I have an alarm clock now, like an old school digital alarm clock. So I try my best to like after I brush my teeth, like plug my phone in and like put it down, and then have it be done. And then I try to also make it not the first thing I do in the morning. So I try to like wait till like 10, 11 o'clock till I really get on the phone, and I have like a full morning if I can before I like get into that. So I might be like waking up, doing a little quiet time, maybe reading devotional, maybe like taking the dog for a walk, maybe getting a little workout in, maybe eating a protein shake or whatever, like doing all this stuff to fill myself up before I then pull my phone out and say, oh my God, I have 25 missed calls. I got, because like once it starts, it goes, but like if you can give yourself that like that little detox, and then realizing like like another thing too is like when somebody calls you, that's just like something on their to-do list, and like you got kind of like a plan where you gotta like put your mask on before you can put somebody else's mask on. It's like, all right, like sometimes you gotta like take care of your to-do list before you can like answer somebody else and help them accomplish their to-do list. Obviously in sales sometimes it's time sensitive, you gotta make an exception, but like generally speaking, if somebody calls you and says, hey, I need you to do this report for me, it's like, all right, I can stop what I'm doing right now and do that, or I can say, all right, make a note of that. And that's the fifth thing that I need to do today. So maybe knock out my other four things that are really important, and then I'll get this report back to the guy by the end of the day. So just trying to like understand like what's important, what's urgent, what's not. And then, like I said, the digital detox is like something I try to do just from a mental health standpoint. Don't always do it, but I try my best to do it.
Oh, so that's why I don't be hearing from you for about 1 or 2 months when I call.
Yeah, well, we'll go with that. We'll go with
Nah, I'm
that.
kidding. Nah, you're you're great at getting back to people, or at least back to me. I'll say that. I'll speak for myself. Um, but it's funny because depending on who your friends are, they know you're gonna get back to them. And you also work in a demanding profession where it's like I said, you got clients trying to reach you, and like you said, you do your digital detox, and you look at your phone, you got 25 missed calls, like. But I think that's so important. And shout out to your business coach for telling you that. I think it's important for all of us to go through digital detox and figure out what that healthy relationship with our phone is, because now more than ever, we do everything on them when we know it. But it's not healthy to look at your phone all the way to the point that you go to sleep, and then it's the first thing you reach for when you wake up. But shout out to you also, because I also keep a digital clock. Like, I don't keep my alarm on my phone anymore. And that's because in college, I got hustled one too many times with my phone alarm not going off, and I'm rushing into the facility. So ever since college, I've had like just a regular alarm clock. So, but that also helped me like not have to look at my phone all the time or through the night, to know that I got this alarm clock, and when it goes off, it's reliable and I could get to where I got to get to. So the question I was going to ask you, because it's very important, because all the ladies want to know, um, is Eric Dungy single?
Oh man, great question. And the answer is yes. Definitely single. Spend a lot of time on my career, but I'm single, and if the right person comes along and she can kind of fit into my business and what I have going on, then I'm very much open for somebody who's going to add some value to my life.
Hey, so hey, ladies, fall into the DMs. You gotta be up, you gotta be up to par, have your stuff together before you go falling into somebody's DM saying, "Hey, heard the podcast, heard Drew's show. What's up? Hey, big head." Before you hit him with all that, make sure your stuff is in line and in order, and that you can add to his life, or you guys can add to each other's life. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say that. And then last, because I wanted to make sure I talk about this last thing before we get a couple quick questions and get out of here. But what got you into developing and investing in more real estate? I know we talked about that a little bit before, but you starting to diversify and getting into a couple different things that Eric is passionate about, but also things that will pay off on the back end. So what got you into developing and investing in real estate?
Yeah, I think part of it is just the idea that, like, as a realtor, you don't have like a traditional retirement account necessarily. Like, you don't have like your 401k or anything like that. So trying to just, be look at some alternate options for income, not only in the short term, but also the long term. So when I first got into real estate, I was really into like acquiring rental properties, because I figured, you get that passive income for them. That way, one day when you're not working, you can live off the income of that. And then the more that you're in real estate and you like make connections and you learn the different rules, and you just learn different loopholes and opportunities. So I started off with a rental property. Then I learned about basically I get the cash out refinance, which is basically just free money. So I was able to take the equity out of this rental property and got free money to then go put it towards another property. So I'm learning different ideas. One thing I'm learning now is about like depreciation, which is like this whole idea that, like, as a business owner, I can say, if I say I were to buy a car, right, because I own my own business, I can write up all the depreciation on the new car as against my business. That's like a separate, that's not development related, but it's like the more you're in business, the more you learn about these loopholes and different opportunities, and tax savings and different things like that. So to answer your question, I initially just started out as a way as like a alternative investment, and kind of thinking about my future, and then looking at like developing it's just like a way to like make your money work for yourself, basically. I remember reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. That was one of the first books I read after football that kind of got me really into entrepreneurship, and just the idea that like your money can be like your hardest worker. And it's like, yeah, I can sit here and work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and grind, but it's like, or I can put my money to work and I can be sleeping and my money can be working for me. And so that whether that's like a rental property, buying land, improving it and selling it, buying land and holding it and selling it in 10 years from now, there's so many different ways to go. But like I said, just knowing that like real estate doesn't have a traditional, retirement setup. So you have to be creative, you have to be proactive and intentional. And then the more networking I'm doing, the more relationships I'm building, the more knowledge I'm gaining, kind of learning different loopholes, different strategies, and different ideas, all with the goal of just like setting up myself up for my future self, up with my family. And I'm not saying that I'm making NFL money, but it's like kind of encouraging to, just be like, hey, like when I got done playing ball, I'm like, there goes my shot at, living a good life and doing all the things I dreamed of. And now I'm going to go, be an $8 an hour intern. And like, I really thought that was just like going to be my path. Right. And then, so now that I've kind of like seen like, all right, you can still, with sales and with investing, you can still like live a really good life and like accomplish some of the things that you want to accomplish. It doesn't have to be NFL or NBA or anything like that. There's still just quote unquote like more normal ways to still have a very successful life.
Hey, bro, don't be afraid to stun on these people. Say, I ain't making NFL money, but I'm close. We close. We putting up $1 million listings. We doing, hey, don't be afraid to, hey, you know how I do. Don't be afraid to let them know what's happening, what's going on. But like you said, man, don't put like you're smart enough to know, yo, we don't have the same savings plan just as a realtor to be able to, so I got to get it some other way. And so that's smart on you for being forward thinking. Like I said, you've always been a smart dude. I looked at you and I'm like, I ain't got to worry about him going to class. I ain't got to worry about him, as far as what his GPA is, because I know that his family instilled that value in him. And so as we get out of here, man, this last thing, I know you work with professional athletes, you work with high level clients, doing what you do as a luxury realtor. What advice would you give any athletes when it comes to either finding a realtor or who they should work with or the things that they should be looking for in order for them to get the best return on their investment or just the best setup for them?
Yeah. So I would say that trust is probably paramount. Like I mentioned, people work with they know, like, and trust. So like before you even get into like, oh, does your realtor have a bunch of sales or who is it like? Do you trust this person? Do you think they have your best interest? Like establish that at first, and then you can go from there. I think it's important to work with somebody who has, who's active in the market because the market's always changing. And so like if you haven't sold a house in 6 months, the market was a lot different 6 months ago. So somebody who's like constantly transacting, constantly active, and then somebody who's knowledgeable in the area or the specific niche that you want to get into. And then shameless plug, I have a network, Compass Sports Entertainment Division. It's 170 members throughout the whole country. So if you're trying to find a realtor and you don't know who to call me and I can plug you in with anybody in any major market and they take care of you. So I did the vetting for you basically.
There are no shameless plugs on this show. I tell everybody, you got a business, you know that somebody's trustworthy. Hey, say it on this show because we are all about keeping the money where we're at and also just about building great and good relationships. So on that note, man, ED, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. You're one of the first people to say, yeah, what you need, I got you. And one of the first people to sign up to even sit down and do this interview. I know you're going to bring a lot of value to people that are coming to watch this, whether they are looking for a home, whether they are trying to be a realtor themselves, whether they are navigating, being done, being a student athlete, a professional athlete, looking for their path. And so I'll go ahead, man. Any last words you want to say to anybody that watches this, or just last words in general?
Ooh, okay, yeah. I somebody recently asked me like my favorite piece of advice, and it was like the saying that I had heard a couple years ago, and it's super short and super succinct. I love it. And basically, for anybody who's trying to like network or like try to cultivate relationships, trying to like go from point A to point B in life, the advice I was given is don't be interesting, be interested.
Man, like I said, dropping gems all day. Once again, that is another episode of Quality Time with Uncle Drew. That is my guest, Eric Dungy, luxury realtor with Compass, doing great things with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You probably see him on the sideline at every game, standing next to Tom Brady. I know how he does. Outside of that, there's another episode of Quality Time with Uncle Drew. We'll catch y'all next time.
Appreciate you, Drew.